Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we have a super interesting topic and a very eminent panel of speakers today. The topic for today is the future of leadership, adapting to AI enabled organizational dynamics. My name is David Zakkam. I work at Uber as a part of the data science team. We have about five directors across a 300 people team. I'm one of them. And before Uber, I have about 20 years of experience. Um, Before Uber, I was at Facebook, and before that, 3 years at Swiggy, heading all of their analytics, and before that, 10 years of consulting experience. So that's a little bit about myself. I will go clockwise on my screen to all the other participants and maybe a quick introduction to each of you. Elizabeth, your top left, we can start with you.
Thanks, David. So, hi everybody. I'm Lisa, and I am very, very excited to be here. To just get started on this. So, I have about 19 years of experience in the field of analytics. Started off with GE Capital, Dell, and other captive firms, and then spent about the last 10 years have been with consulting. Did a major stint with Accenture, and now I lead the customer analytics center of excellence with Kantar. So we have a team of about 150 people looking at customer analytics for industries globally. So, David, you want to move on to the next person?
Yeah, next one is Ashutosh. Then I'll just tell the other two as well, Shuvajit and then Debadrita.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Ashutosh Karanwal. I am from Citi. I have been just 17 years with Citi now, so that's my longest stint. Prior to that, a short stint with Genpact. Earlier, it used to be called JKIS. I'm part of the data and analytics team for Citi. The organization is called Analytics and Information Management. Uh, Held various roles in this organization. Right now, I lead a 200 plus member team, mostly into data analytics support for the business risk and control and the chief data office. So, looking forward to a fruitful discussion and learning from our eminent panelists here. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Ashutosh. Hi, David. Hi, dear panelists. This is Shuvajit. Been in the industry over 2 decades now, working across e-commerce, retail, technology, and my first job, as many of you have highlighted here, has been with G. Uh, Currently, work with Tata Digital, been part of the journey developing Tata New app. In this pursuit, I lead data science and the personalization for the platform. So over the last 2 decades, obviously, have been working on building teams' capabilities and at scale products. A few that we will probably discuss later would be in the areas of personalization and demand forecasting. Over to you, Debadrita.
Unmute.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Shuvajit. So, my name is Debadrita. So, I have around 17 and a half years of experience. I started my career as an investment banker, then shifted to the analytics domain. So, I would say for over 15 years, I have analytics experience. I have worked on both sides of the table, right, like the consultant as well as on the client side. Currently, I work as the partner for APAC Game Theory, which is the consulting arm of WPP based out of Singapore, managing the entire client management, delivery management, and the team management here.
Super impressive profiles. Thanks, everyone. It's a privilege to talk to all of you. To start off the conversation, I just want to look at organizational dynamics change because of AI, and each of you are uniquely seeing different parts of the ecosystem. So I'll probably ask you to talk about your specific part of the ecosystem. Lisa, we'll start with you. You have a lot of experience in customer analytics. What changes are you seeing?
So I think for customer analytics, has always been in the forefront because you're always looking at customer data, right, to make all your decisions. But now with the advances in AI, especially in the last couple of years, what we've seen is there is a lot of focus on personalization. So the entire customer experience becomes paramount. So, companies are not just looking at how do I retain customers or how do I get more customers. It is all about how do I stand out or how do I occupy that mind share within each customer. So that is where a lot of AI initiatives are going on, which is to look at any kind of interaction that the customer has with each of our clients, see what can, that how does that use to personalize every single touch point that the customer has. And along with that, I also see a lot of focus on efficiency improvements. So back end data quality checks, how do I make sure that entire data pipelines are clear. All lot of emphasis is being given to the back end part of it, which was earlier, I think, the focus was more on getting these insights to the customers and using these to drive strategic decisions. But now there is an equal emphasis on how do I get more information and how do I handle that. So driving productivity, efficiency, and personalization is what I would see has become really important in the last couple of years now.
Thanks, Lisa. Next, I'll go to Shuvajit. You are seeing a lot of changes in the in the Indian ecosystem, I'm assuming. How are organizational dynamics changing in the Indian ecosystem because of AI?
Sure, David. So, firstly, I think the orgs are already leveraging the power of data and AI as we speak, right? Be it global companies or Indian companies. And truly, I think going back to Lisa's point, we are also at Tata Digital trying to harness all the user touch point data that we have gathered and stitching together seamless and hyper personalized journeys, right? So that's definitely there. I think the CXOs understand that this could be a differentiator and they want to bring this mainstream very quickly, right? So as opposed to being in the POC stage for a while, I think that stage has already evolved. And I think there are quite a few considerations, right? Either in, I think, generically speaking, there are companies who are trying to, automate a lot of their processes to aid decisioning at scale, right? Or considering very new type of problems altogether. So partnership with academia, partnership with startups, and also there is this whole focus on upskilling, your own workforce and probably having the right mix. So all of this is getting towards, making some of those AI-enabled solutions in the organizations no different in the Indian context.
Yeah, good to see that. Um, 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 to you, Ashutosh, how is this playing across large global companies, especially in the finance space?
Yeah, as Lisa and Shuvajit have mentioned, I think AI is the buzzword and it's not new. I think people have already started on this journey some time back, and especially in the financial industries, right? I think Lisa touched upon the personalization. So you launch a new product and you want to get to the customer, right, as soon as possible. And that part of it, like, in a way, if you look at it, products across the financial industries, if I just talk about the banking, right, almost similar. Now, what is the differentiator, right, that one financial institution gives over the other to the customer, right? Why should a customer pick the product? I think that's about where the AI comes into play, right? And we have seen a hyper personalized offers, right? You go to a mall, you get a message, right? Probably you have a some percentage off if you go to Starbucks or something else, right? So that's already happening. But now the focus is shifted more and more, like each of these financial institutions, either in-house or through their GCCs, right? What they have started doing is building the center of excellence, right? AI center of excellence, where they realize, right, there may not be two differentiating factors in the product, but in terms of the customer experience, right? What is it that they can bring to the table? So I think there's a lot of investment going in these, and there's a lot of leadership commitment also in setting up these centers. There is a focused AI strategy, is what I would say, right? Coupled with a strong data strategy as well, right? Because end of the day, a strong data leads into a stronger AI, right? That leads to the goals that the financial institution is looking at. So I think there's a lot of investment that's happening. A lot of investment is happening on the talent development, right? Either through acquisition of, let's say, data scientists, machine learning experts, etc. Also upskilling the in-house talent, right? People who have been on traditional, let's say, skills, right, tools or techniques. Now everybody is getting upskilled in the new age technologies, right? Because that is the way to go forward, because things are moving very fast and people have to catch up with that. So I think there's a lot of investment that's also happening. One thing that financial institutions especially, right, are also aware of, because it's highly regulated environment, right? So while there is a usage of AI, right, to create some things jazzy, but we have to also make sure like we are within the boundaries of the regulation and compliance. So there's that part that also plays a big role, right, in these financial institutions.
Thanks, Ashutosh. Very interesting. I have multiple follow-up questions, but I'll hold off until later in the discussion. Okay. Debadrita, so I was looking at your profile, and I think the only continent you've not worked in is Antarctica. Okay. uh, so you have experience across APAC, North America, Latin America, Europe, and the Middle East. How is AI changing org dynamics from your viewpoint?
Thanks, David. So what I feel is, the entire maturity or the AI thing will depend how much mature the market is, the region is, as well as the organization is. So if I talk from Ashutosh or Shuvajit's standpoint, I feel they have said part of it. So what I would like to add to it is, most of the APAC organizations or the quality in data in the APAC is very sparse and skewed. So possibly they are very behind in terms of the maturity curve. So if I talk about a project in Thailand or Vietnam, you won't get any data there, possibly. So this entire strategic transformation journey, the leadership has to be very much aware what is possible and what is not. So I feel that currently most of the APAC projects, as compared to any of the US or the UK markets, they are very discreet, very small, very immediate kind of an impact they are looking for. So we don't see much AI experts currently in Thailand, Vietnam, or Indonesia, this kind of region. They are more AI beginners within the organization and less of AI leaders. So I would say that's why we actually rely a lot, just the way Lisa mentioned, a lot around acquisition, training, collaboration, and those things. So that's one part. On the other side, I see there's a huge dynamics playing around the macroeconomic standpoint. So there's two parts, the share of production and the investment flow. So what's happening is AI is primarily dependent on the diversity and the quality of data and the diversity of the projects. So if your projects are more matured, you have more opportunity to implement AI solutions. I mean, if it's an iterative kind of a project or a repetitive project, you have more opportunity to implement those. As a result, already the dominant economies, or I would say the dominant regions like US or UK, who had a lot of diversified projects, they are able to attract more AI opportunities, AI talent. As a result, the gap between, I would say the less matured market and the more matured markets is increasing, which obviously will have more on the macroeconomic standpoint. So the GDP will get impacted. So I think that it is not only related to the organization, but the region and the dynamics will play a significant role in the entire AI landscape across regions. Just to add to that, what I feel is the company which I represent, it's a global company, so we cater to global clients. So it's not when I say that UK is a matured market. What I've seen is there are a few countries within Europe where the data is they have talent, but the talents are very skewed and scattered. So it also acts like a typical APAC market. So we can't generalize that UK is a matured market, but I would say usually predominantly the entire AI landscape will depend on the maturity curve of the AI.
Got it. Thank you so much. That was very interesting. Do you have any perspective on Latin America and Middle East?
Yes.
Um, Are they closer to APAC or are they closer to North America, Western Europe?
Okay. So my experience with LATAM was when I was working with AB InBev. So I worked for Colombia, Brazil, Argentina markets. They have a significant there. Their challenge is very different. They are not only quality of data, but the regulation. So Colombia, for example, they don't have any authority to actually create advertisement for wine and spirits in the television. That point of time, I'm talking about 2017, 2018. So obviously, the kind of marketing campaigns or the kind of AI or analytic solutions that you can implement there gets restricted. So there's different types of challenges that play there. I would say for Middle East, possibly it's more like APAC because it's still a developing economy. But LATAM is a completely different ballgame. It has data issues, it has regulatory issues, and different other perspectives to it.
Understood. Understood. Thanks, everyone. So then I'll ask each of you this question. Can you think of two to three opportunities and two to three risks that come to the organization due to AI enablement? Okay. Again, I'll go clockwise. Lisa, Ashutosh, Shubhajit, and Debadrita.
Yep. Thanks, David. So, in my viewpoint, the risks and the opportunities are interlinked. Okay, so the opportunities are like what we spoke about, right? There is more and more chances or areas where you can personalize your content. There are a lot of avenues open that will actually help any company increase their sales, get more customers, and everything. The risks are also that while doing this, companies need to ensure that they are operating within those guardrails of how to be responsible and how to be ethical. Because, just an example that we had was you had a health insurance client, and what they were, they had data on things like Fitbit data that was getting in, right? So once you know how active a particular person is, you can actually use that data to determine what kind of pricing you want to give that person, because you know what the risks are and so on, which is not ethical. So therefore, I think every business is in that clash between how do I use this to personalize to the nth degree, and then there is another part of it which is also saying, okay, how do I do all of this while ensuring that my customers' data privacy is maintained, the data security is in place, I am not infringing on any government regulations or on any such guidelines, and how do I ensure that biases don't creep in? So I think that is the main risk and opportunity play that happens in companies today. And this is from the consumer or the consumer standpoint, right? There is also a risk or opportunity at the employee or the organizational dynamics viewpoint, because with AI and increasing usage of AI, there is a lot of repetitive tasks that every employee can now automate. But there is also the fear that if I automate all of this, what happens to my job? So again, there is a risk and opportunity. So there is an opportunity for a lot of increases in efficiency, productivity, but there is also the risk in people's mind that if this happens, then what do I do next? So I think, and then that bias or that mindset creeps in, that AI, that there's that fear around AI. So AI is good for consumers or for the customers to increase revenue, but as an organization, I don't want to implement it because I'm scared about what happens to my job. So I think this is a mindset change, and in my mind, this risk opportunity part is interlinked both from the org dynamics point of view and also from the customer point of view.
Are you seeing any org changes that are from the clients or from the people that you're working with? Because Ashutosh mentioned things like AI Center of Excellence or
Yeah,
AI being a part of our
definitely.
strategy. So
So,
you are
so
seeing that.
yes. So I would think that around 10 years back, right, analytics was still big. It was still big, but it wasn't, it was always a good to have, right? So there were, it all depended on, it was dependent on the top management and somebody having that understanding about numbers and so on. And therefore, that was how it was. But now it is a must to have. So they need to, companies need to answer to their shareholders, to their board, that they are implementing analytics, they are using data driven, they're making data driven decisions. So that is important. And how they do it varies from geography to geography. It's like Debadrita said, for somebody in APAC, maybe just a very minor amount of personalization, right? Just identifying what product to sell a customer. That might be huge for them. Whereas for a very mature market like North America, for them it could mean that, I am crossing an IKEA store. Can I send IKEA campaigns at that moment? So, at that zero moment of truth, this guy comes in and makes a purchase. So I think the amount of personalization differs, but it's dependent on the market and the client. But this is becoming important. So everybody has that need, or in their mind, they do want to use AI and analytics to drive their decisions. So that is there.
Okay. Okay. Ashutosh, any opportunities and risks that you are seeing?
Yeah, so I'll again continue the context from the banking industry side. So of course, see, if you look at the operations part of banking, right, very manual, very volume high, right? So of course, there's a lot of opportunity through the use of AI, right, to automate a lot of this stuff, right?
Mhm.
And that's what we are seeing, right? Case in point, IVR was when IVR came into picture, right? So it was a bit of automation at that point of time, right? So we are seeing a lot of automation and efficiency opportunities, right, through the use of AI. Of course, reaching out to customer through the personalized offers is another thing, where AI and analytics are playing their role. Cost, right? You automate a lot of stuff. You reduce the manual touch point. You reduce the workforce required to do that similar job. And as Lisa had mentioned, right? So again, it could be a risk as well, where the employees may feel my job is going away. But of course, there's a lot of cost advantage, right? And of course, any institution for that matter who has a strong AI strategy, there's always a competitive advantage over their peers. In terms of the risks, see, this space is new, but I think people are speculating about how will this play around the regulations, especially now. Each country has its own regulation, right? Uh, and if you formulate a strategy in AI, right, it's using millions or billions of records, right? We do not know where it's breaching any regulation, right? So we have to be on our toes, right, to make sure, like, and especially if it's a global project, right, that's touching upon data from across different markets or countries. So we have to be very sure of, like, we are not breaching any uh, country policies or regulations. So there, I think the people who are running the AI shop, right, they have to be very careful, and they have to be more educated about the policies, right? And that's why this data strategy, I'll come back to the same thing, right? Making sure, right, what gets into as a back end to the AI front end, right, is all regulated, and we do not get into trouble later, right? So I think these are the risks that I personally feel, because in a financial industry, data privacy, customer data, you cannot, I mean, have any loopholes around that. So
How much of a threat is the reduced speed of innovation because of regulations? Because I'm hearing that there are smaller fintech companies who may not be bound by those regulations, who are able to innovate really fast. Is that a big threat that you're seeing to large organizations?
see, yeah, it always comes, right? So if I'm part of a GCC that's supporting a banking institution, I'll always try to compare with some fintechs, right? But more and more as we speak, right, all these fintechs are also bound by the same regulations, right? It's not like they have a free hand to everything, right? And it also a matter of, like, what is customer most satisfied, right, with what strategy, right? Because
Mhm.
every customer, all of us are customer, banking customers as well. We want to make sure, like, my personal data is not being misused or used for something that it's not meant to be. I think at least that uh, assurance they get from the banking or financial institutions, right? Of course, nowadays data is, like, you fill a KYC form, you don't even know where all the data is floating around, right? But I think there is a bit of an advantage that fintechs carry, but overall I feel those fintechs will also fall under the purview of the same regulations, so there won't be much difference, right? And it will be a level playing field end of the day.
Got it. Got it. Shuvajit?
Yep, I think great points, both Lisa and Ashutosh. I feel again, I think point Lisa made, opportunities and risk are probably interlinked. I think AI and particularly generative AI has a lot of promise, right? And I think a lot of organizations are jumping onto the bandwagon. There is a FOMO effect. But it's very important to identify the right problems. So it starts with that, right? I mean, what problems can AI solve for you? And don't force feed AI into every problem. I think it's not a magic thing that it'll, work out everything for you. So I think having that clarity is very important. So identify, very large scale problems that you have. I mean, I have a lot of e-commerce and retail background. We have worked in pricing and inventory systems or personalization and search system, right, which are very large scale and require automated decisioning at scale, right, where you cannot, I mean, and particularly an example at Target, right, when we were building the demand forecasting system for the enterprise, I mean, there would be like hundreds of inventory and merch analysts, who would have, this category insights and knowledge over decades, right, and it is very difficult to replicate that in a model or a machine. So it has to be a human in the loop, and I think that's something that I think organizations need to be very careful about how they build this system. Right, they cannot completely eliminate humans here, but human in the loop, I think, is very important. Right, where you are able to take the insights and the knowledge that they have created over a period of time and bring it into your AI systems. Right, so that your systems over a period of time can also improve and become human-like, right? So that's something that I have observed at close quarters, and giving those teams and telling them that it's only going to make your job better. I think reduces a lot of the conflicts and I would say resistance, right? So that's very important. I would say also faster experimentation to try and see whether whatever you are trying to do has value in it really. Gen AI actually, I think, a lot of promise, a lot of potential use cases across marketing, and customer service, etc. I think obviously some of them have already started using mainstream, but it's important to also contextualize in your area, right? And I think a lot of you talked about data or unavailability of it, right? So without good data, nothing would work out. Those are absolutely important things. So yeah, I think solving the right problem and bringing human in the loop, I think, are important things that I would, I mean, advise organizations to do and be careful about.
Yeah, good point, Shuvajit. So I remember when I was in consulting in 2010, people were like thumping the table and saying, I need big data. I need big data now. Okay. And 2015, 16, 17, people were thumping the table and saying, we want AI now. Okay. And this year it's been, we want Gen AI now. Okay.
Right.
Everybody's like, we want Gen AI. We don't care what you do with it. We just want Gen AI.
Right.
We
Good
don't
point.
even know what it is. I mean, at some point, some
Yeah.
of the CEOs I talked to, I mean, we don't even know what it is,
Yeah.
but we want that.
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
want
exactly.
ChatGPT in
Yeah.
our dashboards. We want it in our models. We want it everywhere. Yeah.
So,
Anyway, Shuvajit, follow-up question for you. You made an important point on how fast experimentation is a big deal. I'm also hearing about it iterative prototyping of products as another new thing. Any tips for organizations on how they can be successful in good quality experimentation?
yeah, I think David, I think one important thing to know is I mean, experimentation cannot be eternal, right? So we have to time box it, and I think there has to be clear outcome based. So and experiment not. Also, I think it's important to drive a culture within the organization that an experiment will always not be successful, right? So I'm sure all of you would have tried this, and maybe 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 probably don't even work. Only those one or two that work, I think, you scale it up, right? So time boxing it, bringing that culture of test and learn, I think is very important, right? I think not many organizations have that test and learn culture, which I think is extremely important. Yeah, I think maybe those couple of things would be very useful more culturally.
Got it. Got it. Debadrita, I know everyone has spoken a lot. You know what? For the next question, I'll go the opposite way, so you can have a lot to say. What are you seeing as a few opportunities and risks?
I think I will first incorporate whatever each of the panelists has mentioned. But I think one very important thing which all of them mentioned is the talent. Now, so far, before Gen AI or AI, whenever we used to do the hiring process, I think the hiring managers always had an individual bias to find the person based on him or her own personal traits. So I think now once we have an open source of data, a bigger cohort of data, I think our hiring process can be more unbiased, which means it opens up opportunities, to get better talent, cross talent, which can actually help in the implementation process on this entire strategic journey. So I think that's a great opportunity, but it obviously comes with inherent risk, as Lisa also mentioned, that it's an open data. So we need to be very much careful that how reliable that data is, what are the things or the regulations, how the data is placing out in the entire ecosystem. The next part, I think, another quick important thing I feel, because of AI, the entire leadership hierarchy has become more flattened, because now we are working in cross-functional project in a more collaborative way. So I think the org structure has also changed, the organization dynamics. So now I do, I personally feel, based on my experience, that the org structures are now more flattened. We can work out of different data projects, different kinds of projects across different domain. So far it was only industry specific. Now it is, very technology specific, very process specific. So we can work across different kinds of projects. So I think that's another thing, which is an opportunity. But yes, that is like you are democratizing the entire decision making process. So it has an inherent risk that whether we are doing it with the right guidelines. So I think these are the other two opportunities and risks that I see.
Got a quick follow up on that. In the world which is increasingly cross functional and multifunctional, and organizations are becoming a lot more matrixed, how can a typical data scientist change their ways of working to succeed in this new world?
Okay, so I feel, when I say data scientist, it's a very, I think, generic term. It can be considered for someone with 20 years of experience and someone who has just started his or her career. So I think for someone who has a decent amount of experience, who is in a position to make a decision, I think that person possibly doesn't need to know the entire methodologies, because it's a cross-functional project. But what that person possibly needs to know, and it's imperative, I think, is, what's the process flow, what's there in place. As I think Ashutosh mentioned, that some use cases, so you have to identify use cases, you need to know what you have as resources for that, what is the exact process flow, and what's the risk inherent to it. So I think that's one thing each data scientist now need to know, because so far I think 10 years back it was more on the technique and the methodology which was important. Now it is, what's the outcome and what's the consequences of the application of it, that is becoming more important.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. Debadrita, next question back to you, and I'll go the other way around. Debadrita, Shuvajit, Ashutosh, and Lisa. How can companies benefit from this?
Surely, because now you have a gamut of data to access to. So it's not necessarily that you have to be dependent on your own technology or the data architecture or the capabilities within the organization. You can always tap on open sources. You can always tap on, the different opportunities like the collaboration or the training and the acquisitions. So I feel that that is one very important thing, because you're not just focusing on what you have right now, but what you can get across the entire ecosystem. Uh, Apart from that, I think, again, as each one of them already mentioned, there's a lot of efficiency improvement, automation. Those things are surely apart from this entire AI spectrum.
Got it. Got it. Shuvajit, how can companies benefit from this?
Sure. I think obviously for many, obviously depends on the maturity which Debadrita had called out at the beginning, be it maturity of data, maturity of AI. I think for many cases you have problems that are already solved, right? And then some cases where there are new problems. So that also brings in that dynamics. Um, in many cases, senior leadership has to align to this vision first, right? So that the organization is in on that path of that journey, and understanding that this is not temporary, right? This is going to create disruption in several markets, and be prepared for it. Maybe an early mover would help in your areas and get ready, right? I think I refer to upskilling. I refer to partnership with the right academia or startups. I think those will probably help the organization leapfrog where there is no internal talent or lack of internal talent. And yeah, I mean, some experimentation, some big bets probably, which may or may not work. But that's how I think disruption works really.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Ashutosh?
For me, I think definitely it will play out big in terms of cost reduction for the companies, right? Especially the banking industry, because there's a lot of manual effort that will be automated, right? And of course, that manual or human effort can be reskilled to do something more, let's say more analytical or more business, right? Second is speed to market, right? Because that will become a differentiator between any two companies, right? Who can reach out to the customer faster, right? So, and this is what we are already seeing, right, happening. And then, of course, if both the things work out fine, it also helps in growing your sales and revenues, right? So, I think in the banking industry, these would be the factors, key factors that I feel the companies will benefit.
Lisa?
Yep. So I think everybody said this. Devdutta, now I understand. When it came to you, the points were taken. So I think to just summarize benefits for both the top line and the bottom line. Top line in terms of increase in personalization, increase in the customer experience, leading to more revenue. And I think a lot of operational efficiencies in the bottom line, leading to cost reductions, faster time to market, and getting out more and more innovative products. So that's how I would see it.
Um, Maybe question for Lisa and Ashutosh. Uh, I don't know if you have any example, but do you have any examples off the top of your head of how consumers are seeing a new generation of products because of these changes? Anything that you have off the top of your head?
I think consumers are very greedy right now
Mhm.
because you are spoiled for choices, right? You whatever you want, there is always at least one or two companies that are going to offer that to you. So I think it is a very consumer driven market, and that's what we see it with at least I see with all my clients, right? With retail especially. So you have every other company offering a discount, every other company, the amount of products or the categories that they have that is increased. So there's a lot of choice, and for the consumers, I think that is there. I mean, there's a lot of information overload or a choice overload that is happening at their end.
Yeah. Okay. Ashutosh, I know you might tell this example. So there's an insurance company in the US. I think it is Progressive, not very sure, which has drivers opt in to this program where they keep a device in the car, and the device measures hard braking, speed, quality of driving, things like that. And your insurance premiums change because of that. Earlier, you mentioned how Fitbit data could be like violation of privacy, whereas this one is where users are opting in, and if you're a good driver, then you pay lesser premium because of that. Are you any such examples that you are also seeing?
See, of course, different banking institutions have different products, right? Where the user can choose to opt in, right?
Mhm.
Uh, right now, it's nothing like that comes top of my head right now. But again, if not from a banking, but in a way, if you look at like your earlier question on right, how has things changed for the consumer, right? I think if you look at it, when was the last time you went to a branch? Right, everything is digitized, right? I think even our KYC documents now we do it digital, right? So that's what has changed for the customer, and so much so, right? Actually, their digital experience becomes a differentiator now, choosing one bank over the other. Right. I mean, that has what the customer's behavior has changed. Right? They're no longer like, I go to a branch, how a relationship manager comes, greets me, gives me a seat, offers a coffee, nothing like that. I go to a bank website, right? And what is my experience there? That becomes a differentiator now. That's customer experience, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Now, if you go to any other app, for example, recently I heard even Zomato is launching some chatbots specifically for their fixed customers, right? Specific customers. So I think, as Lisa mentioned, customers are like spoiled for choice, right? And these experiences, now experience is becoming a differentiator, right, for any institutions or any banking institution, as a matter of fact, any organization, right? So that's what.
Actually, good points, Ashutosh. So there's also, you can see the slow creep of the digital progress, which has led to transformations which we may not even be aware of. Good point.
Yeah.
So I remember a joke where it's not funny, but the parent is telling the child that, you know what, when we were children, there was this TV program which would come once a week, and you have to wait for it. And if you miss it, you miss it forever. And if you watch it, the next episode has to be 1 week later. Okay. And the child is shocked, saying, how could you have lived this way? Okay. So we used to be in that world
Right.
10 years ago, right? So that is digital progress that we are seeing today, which we may not even be consciously aware of. So good point, Ashutosh. Okay, so last question for all of us. Um, I think I'll go clockwise only, with starting with Lisa. What do leaders do differently, considering the evolving realities of this space? Lisa?
Yeah. So, okay. So what I think needs to be done, right? I mean, within any organization is, one is there is a shift now. So there is a very value shift from the way leadership is being perceived, from the kind of organizational dynamics that's coming. So I would say that we need to start valuing employees who know how to ask the right questions and not know the right answers. So especially with chat gpt, if you are aware of a code, say you know it about 30%, you can use chat gpt to get the exact code which earlier it would be somebody with a lot of experience, technical experience, would bring in. So I think that those lines are getting blurred. So now I think for an organization, you need to value that. So people who have that the domain perspective, people who know that, okay, these are the kind of questions that I need to ask in terms of understanding what is the objective behind doing a certain analysis, why are we doing this, what is the client going to get out of it. I think that becomes more important, and these are soft skills. So I think all these soft skills now start to become more important as compared to the technical skills which were very important a couple of years back. So that is one part of it. Another part of it, you need to create a culture of experimentation and failure, because with all these advances, and this is just, I mean, I think this next 3 years is going to be immensely different from the last 10 years, because at the rate at which each new innovation is coming up, there's going to be a lot of flux. So to create that culture of experimentation and reward people for failures, that you've tried something, did not work, fine, move on to the next one. Because only until you start doing that will people be willing to experiment and be confident that I can fail at this, but there was some value in doing this, and therefore, and so on. So I think that becomes more important, where earlier I think we used to celebrate a lot of successes, but now I think we need to get to that mode where we start celebrating failures as well. And another thing that I would uh, think that leaders need to do differently is that we need to simplify things. I just think that with the advance of so much of data, so many techniques, there's like a lot of things that are happening within the organization. And I think as a leader, that clarity of thought and staying focused and simplifying and identifying what is really important, I think that is a soft skill that is going to become even more important in the years to come. So that's how I would look at it.
Super points, Lisa. I'm now thinking we should have asked this question at the beginning only. Okay, Ashutosh, you're next.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I believe uh, what we had learned when we were fresh out of college versus what we see, right? The campus hires who come. I think there's a vast difference, right? Maybe technology has changed the way of how people prepare themselves also, right? For any campus interview, everything has changed. I think as leaders, we have to keep ourselves abreast of what's happening, right, in the industry as well in the especially in the technology space, right? I'm sure somebody fresh out of IIT would know Gen AI more than any of us, right? So as leaders, I think we have to know the what's happening around, right? We have to keep learning ourselves, right? Of course, we may not be as good a coder as somebody fresh out of college, but we should know what a particular technology can be used for, right, for the business. Of course, leaders carry their own expertise through their experience, right? That probably somebody fresh or with lesser number of years experience may not carry, but we have to keep ourselves abreast of what's happening, right? So we have to keep on upskilling ourselves as well. Uh, Second, with the advancement of AI, I'll come back to the same point on data privacy and security. Right, we have to find ways, right, to make sure like we are not breaching any data privacy, any regulation, right? Because no matter how jazzy the product may look like, if you breach even one policy or one regulation, you're gone, right? So we have to find ways, right? The speed at which things are getting developed, can we match the same speed and make sure like we also have those controls in place, right, around the data regulations. And I think there's also a school of thought that feels like not necessarily you have to build everything on your own, right? There is a partner opportunity of partnership as well, right? I think earlier you mentioned about fintechs. So it's not always a competition, it can be also a partnership, right? Maybe somebody has developed something, right? Why can I just partner, right, for a particular project or a specific set of projects where somebody is offering a platform as well as those skills that I do not have to, I mean, recreate, right? And I can just leverage that skills. So I think that is also happening a lot now. We are seeing financial institutions, fintechs, technology companies, they're partnering with each other and creating products. So I think that's what we are seeing is happening now. And that's what probably the leaders have to start thinking, or maybe they're already thinking in those lines, right? And last but not the least is the data strategy. You need to have a very robust data strategy around any project that you want to run.
Got it. Got it. Good points. Shuvajit?
Sure. I think a lot got covered already, but I guess AI is here for real, right? I think that's important to acknowledge and be ready and brace yourself. I think there will be disruptions in the market, and it will be important to look at, and for example, how digital disrupted the market several years back. The likes of Barnes and Noble and Kodaks were out of business, right? So I'm sure this wave of AI is going to also create disruptions, and it's important to be very aware of your vertical or industry you're part of and how disruption is going to be taking place, right? And that's why bracing yourself for that, finding the right opportunities and the right problems. Again, I think I'll iterate myself, not solving a wrong problem with AI is very important. Not everything requires an AI. Sometimes, simple solution. I think thinking through first principles, product thinking. I think this will not go away, whether it's Gen AI, or whatever comes in next decade or so, right? So I think some of the foundational and fundamental thought processes will need to be there. As leaders, like you said, I think Ashutosh, it's very important that you have to be abreast with what's happening. I have found myself reverse mentorship, as a very good way of doing this. And if you're leading from the front, I think there is no, I mean, nothing to feel shy about that. You are also in a continuous learning path, and I think that also brings a lot of motivation within the team, right? Um, Having dedicated sessions of learning from each other, I think small groups very important. Experimentation was mentioned again, iterating that iteratively. I think a lot of test and learn. Failures should be celebrated, and I think yeah, I mean uh, this is a little bit of a temporary phase. I think a uh, lot of the things will fall in place maybe in a year or two. A lot of experiments, people are still trying to figure out, do what is required for their verticals. Hopefully, things get stabilized. India is a very dynamic market and picks on to everything pretty quickly, right? An early adopter, I would say, as opposed to, and obviously there's no doubt of good talent. So
Got
yeah, yeah, David.
Thanks, Shuvajit. Debadrita, same question to you, but I have two follow-up questions which I'll ask right away. So we are seeing the disruption is happening in the industry. So what do leaders need to do to lean into the disruption? Meaning, how can companies disrupt themselves so that the disruption is the same company as opposed to a different company? Second is, what culture changes do leaders need to make in their organizations to benefit from the changes that we're seeing? Plus, any other perspectives on how leaders should behave differently.
Sure. So I think most of the points have been covered by each one of them. The only thing which I feel possibly the leaders can look into is, since I belong to WPP, which is famous as a creative agency, media agency. So there's few subjective and qualitative aspect, which every individual, every employee brings onto the table. And belonging from a media company, I think the creativity is the prime focus. So I think the leaders, when they are searching for use cases where AI can be implemented, they also need to shift their mindset and think what are the use cases where we can value employees' individual talent rather than just the AI focus. So I think that should be also emphasized, because then only you can have the same organization by embracing this disruption. So it has to be focusing on what AI can do, but also focusing on the complementary part or the aspect of it, that what it can't do. So I think that will be one of the important things leaders should focus on. And then, what things they can do to make the organization embrace this change. I feel it's pretty much the same thing goes, like aware of your guardrails, focusing on the different risk mitigations, continuous learning, because I think continuous learning encompasses everything, that you are learning what's the risk and what's the benefits. So I think it has to be a holistic view of both.
Understood. Thank you so much, Debadrita. And that was the last question from my side. Thanks so much, everyone. I actually leave with something that I got when Debadrita was speaking. I like deliberately misunderstanding her, which is AI may not have personality, and having a diversity of thought coming into the ways of working is actually important for a leader to encourage as well. In Uber, we have this value called "great minds don't think alike." Okay, where the thinking is to just encourage diverse forms of thinking, which actually lead to innovation happening within the organization. So thanks, Debadita, for pointing that out, and thanks everyone on the panel. I really learned a lot today. Very interesting discussion, and hope the audience has learned a lot as well. And looking forward to talking to you, everyone, again. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.